Mhm.
Welcome to the Really Useful Podcast. My name is Christian Cawley, and with me this week is Ian Buckley.
Hey, how's it going, folks? It's nice to be back. Hey, Christian, how are you?
Yeah, not bad. Thank you. Mainlining coffee this morning.
Yes.
And we are here to give you the information that you need as a non-techie person about how to make the best use of the technical world around you, whether it's hardware or software or services on the internet. All that kind of thing. There's a good chance that you're not using it to its full capability, or that you just don't understand what's going on. Well, we're here to translate things, make things simpler for you to get the most out of what you're using. Think of making yourself more productive with your tech, and we're here to answer the questions, fill in the gaps. On this week's Really Useful Podcast, we're going to be looking at the new releases from Apple. We're going to be looking at Flickr, who have introduced a limit on photo uploads. We're going to try and find out whether or not there is such a thing as an unbiased news source.
Oh, boy.
And we're going to be also taking a look at what the best printer is in terms of your budget and keeping in costs low. And we're also going to finally take a quick look at DIY computer desks. Now, you can enjoy the Really Useful Podcast on YouTube. You'll see us both on there. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. If you'd like to. You might also prefer to listen to us. You'll be able to find us on iTunes and Spotify and Google Podcasts and pretty much all the major podcast hosts. You will find us there, and we're ready to go. So let's go straight away into Apple, who have unveiled a new MacBook Air, a new Mac Mini, and a new iPad Pro. These have been released in the past week.
Now, I happen to know that we have not identical, but sort of similar views when it comes to Apple stuff. And I kind of feel like while we should go through all of these three separate products and talk about them for their merits, and all this kind of stuff, I feel like the caveat I always feel like saying as soon as Apple is mentioned is if you really like Apple products and you have the money, then yeah, get them. You're gonna really enjoy them. If you don't mind maybe having to spend a bit more to get it repaired when it goes wrong, then fine. And then please do get it, because there's a reason why Apple have cornered the market. They are easier to use for some people, and if you already have an iPhone, then it makes sense for everything else you have to fit that. And the second half of that sentiment is, if you are ever going to buy anything from Apple, just know that much like many other things in life, you can get the same thing, or at least the same processing power, just without the sheen, for much, much less. And it's all down to what you want as a user experience. I think that's the most diplomatic way I can put it.
Yeah, I'd largely agree with that. I think a lot of people use Apple because it looks great and it's prestigious. At the same time, a lot of people use Apple because it's Apple products, because they're simply so straightforward to use. There's no messing about. You can do what you need to do in a very small number of steps. My wife, for instance, she's recently switched from a Windows phone, not a bad Windows phone either, a flagship at the time, a Lumia 950 XL, to an iPhone 6S. She has an iPad Air, and we used to have an Apple TV. And she's also used Android phones, and she's finding the iPhone ridiculously simple to use. It's got a much better camera. Actually, it's probably only got a slightly better camera than the Lumia 950, but it's a lot easier to use, the camera. It's a lot easier to get stuff on Instagram or any other social network using that. And, that's a basic use for a lot of people, is just take a photo, share it quickly, check email quickly, make a phone call quickly with a minimum of fuss. And, Apple just does everything so well. Everything is so straightforward. We've all seen the Apple adverts, at least the adverts for the iPhone, which I don't think they do that many these days. Because
but we all remember the old, we remember the old ones.
Show you the quick process of getting through everything, and then it might say little grey writing at the bottom and actual steps not shown or whatever. But regardless, it's still quick, and slick and easy to use. And I think that's pretty much why we're here, to help people make things, to help people find a way of using things. In Apple, that's core to Apple's raison d'etre.
It is, and that's one of the things that I think you've highlighted very, very well the reason why I think no matter what, there's a lot of people, especially in the tech world, who have nothing good to say about Apple. And I should qualify the things I was saying before, despite having, like I said, the opinion of for me, it's cost. Cost has always been the big thing. And of course, if I was someone where the amount of money I spent on things was less of an important factor, because there are people out there who, wealth means something different to every person. And for me, if I kind of left that aside, I don't know if I would feel the same way. But I think you've really hit the nail on the head. That so many people are so used to having the iPhone that they don't have their phone, they have their iPhone. And then it follows that the other products from Apple would be used for that. So you want a laptop, you get a MacBook. You want a desktop computer. Admittedly, a lot of people don't even bother. They don't need those. But if you do, get an iMac. But which brings us straight to the new Mac Mini. That's the one that is interesting. It stands out to me.
Yeah.
Out of all of them, the Mac Mini is the one that I can't see that many people just getting a Mac Mini for because they like the look of it. You know what I mean? I like the sound of it. That's a functional computer. Yeah. And the old Mac Mini at the time was amazing because compared to the other mini PCs you could get, it was significantly better, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it is. It is interesting to see that back, and especially the top end Apple computers, the Pro, has had a bit of a checkered life over the past few years. So yeah, it is interesting to see that, and with USB-C as well, which is the latest USB connection format. I don't have one handy to demonstrate, but it's the kind of long, thin one with the curved ends. If you can see that, that's USB Type-C there.
Yes, yeah.
So for that to be, cable management is a massive problem, and we have too many cables. We all have too many cables. We've all got cables from old phones. Even if you've got cables from old iPhones, you've probably got at least two different types of cable. So for if the Mac Mini using USB-C is an indication that Apple is moving away from the Lightning port, then I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. No, absolutely. USB-C is something that I would suggest if you have, if you have the option of getting things with a USB-C port, and as we said, that's the one that looks, it looks like a sort of like an oval shape,
sort of cylindrical, isn't it?
Cylindrical, yeah. But anything I do. Two tech journalists struggle over the names for shapes. I'm hoping that USB-C becomes a standard because it is as a format. You don't need to know why, but USB-C cables can do a lot. Yeah. There's a reason why the new MacBooks have just a USB-C connection, and that's because the 20 or so volts that the computer requires, or the 5 volts that it can provide as USB, it knows how to do it. It can do it is the easiest way of saying it without going into technical details. As to the new iPad Pro, if I remember correctly, does that also have USB-C? I can't remember. I was just looking at this, but I've lost it because I don't know if I was just reading an article which was saying, does this mean that USB-C will be the thing, or whether it actually has it? I can't see right now.
Okay, well, let me just go through these. So there's the new MacBook Air, which is going to set you back $1,200. There's a new Mac Mini, which is around $800, and the new iPad Pro, also $800. Though you can go higher.
Yeah,
probably you can go high with any of these. In fact, it is interesting to see the Mac Mini revised in that way. Yeah, I mean, that's a basic $800. That's for the Intel Core i3 processor version. And there are going to be higher versions, bigger versions. It's that's the thing with Apple. There's no new iPhones this year. And if you are interested in buying those, then you could wait a few months until the prices come down a bit, or look for an offer or whatever. Or you could sell your old gear, but that's not worth as much as it was a few weeks ago. So if you are in bed with Apple, then those are the things that you're probably interested in buying.
So to not leave it on a complete negative from my perspective, I would say that if you do want a very lightweight functional computer to not do anything too heavy hardware wise with, and you do have the money to spare, a MacBook Air is going to be good. It's going to have a decent battery life. It's going to be very easy to use. It's going to look great. The screen's going to be fantastic. But at the same price, you could get two laptops with almost the same specs. And you've got to ask yourself if you don't need Mac OS, whether now might be a good time to learn how to use another operating system, because you literally could save yourself half the money you would spend on it. It's all down to how much you value. So it's all down to how much value you're willing to put into tech, I suppose.
Sure. So yeah, that's what's going on with Apple, and all that hardware is available. And they've got the timing right, because it's nearly Christmas. So
yeah, damn right. It's surprisingly good timing there.
Yeah. Okay. In April 2018, SmugMug acquired Flickr from Oath, and now Flickr is no longer going to be completely free to use. You get a maximum of 1,000 photos with a free Flickr account, or you can pay $5.99 a month or $49.99 a year, which will work out cheaper than around $6 a month, to use Flickr Pro for unlimited uploads. And a few things about this have surprised me. That actually, I'd forgotten people were using Flickr. Actually, that was the main thing.
Yeah.
And then there's also the fact that we've got Google Photos and Google Drive storage. We've got OneDrive storage and iCloud storage, which all offer vast amounts, which would give you more than 1,000 photos. So you've got a few thoughts about why they might have done this, don't you?
I do. When we were first kind of discussing this, it sort of seemed that a very strange move to take this service that has historically been free and to limit it. But I kind of have a bit of a theory about it, which is of course completely unproved conjecture. But this is a podcast, so that's what people do. SmugMug, if you're not familiar with them, I sort of had passing. I was actually aware of them, as they are a premium photo service. They kind of describe themselves, if I remember correctly, as it's not just a place for professional photographers to put their photographs. It's a place where professional photographers are valued. It's a premium network for people who want to who work as photographers and want a great place for portfolios and things like that. Now, I might not have that 100% correct, but the fact remains they are a premium photography service.
Sure.
Flickr used to be a place, and I have a Flickr account. I haven't looked at it for years, I think, but I have a Flickr account. And I put photos up there that I'd taken with my digital camera. And then I got an Android phone, and I never used Flickr again, because I could take photos on the phone, and then they would be stored in my Google account. And over time, that has evolved to the point that if you were someone who was anything other than a professional photographer, you would take photos with your phone, which would automatically be backed up to the cloud. Then you could just flag which were the photos you wanted people to see, and that could be a public-facing album. And indeed, you can set up Google Photos to just have a public-facing album for the public, and then you can keep all your stuff behind the curtain, as it were. Something I should probably write an article about. So turning Flickr into part of their premium service, in my mind, makes sense. Not because they think more people will pay for it. Some people probably will if they're deep into Flickr. But because why fight with Google? Why fight with Apple? Why fight with any of the services that'll give you free online storage for all of your photos? When they're already synced to their devices. I don't know if that's
Yeah. Well, It does seem strange. I'm sure they've got a good idea. I'm sure they believe this is going to work, and it's going to work out for the best for everyone. If you have a Flickr account and you have more than 1,000 photos in it, you have until January the 8th to do something about that. There are ways you can download your photos, your snaps, anything that you've got up there, to get it below the 1,000. Would be a wise idea. Then again, you don't know if they're going to change it again in future. There's no guarantee against that. They might drop it down to 500.
Yeah, you've not really any. That's the thing. As to what happens next, it's really hard to say. I would Again, absolutely conjecture. I'm sure this is absolute rubbish, but it wouldn't be the first time that a company acquires another company, changes its service, and then functionally shuts it down. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Flickr name became just part of SmugMug's service.
Sure.
But what you can do, and we do have an article on the Make Use of website about this, just called "Download Flickr Photos with Their Original Resolutions," which teaches you how to do exactly that. If you do have your photos up on Flickr and you want to get them down there before they start getting deleted, which they will be from the oldest first, I believe, in January is when they will start getting deleted. There is an article on the site which will teach you how to get all of those photos downloaded. And while off the top of my head, I can't think of a service that would do it, I'm sure there's a way of doing that in bulk as well.
Yeah.
But the main thing you need to know is if you have a Flickr account, you have 2 months and 3 days to get them down to 1,000 photos, or they will start deleting whatever photos they think should be deleted first from your account.
Absolutely. So move swiftly, move quickly, and use one of the alternative services to store your photos online, or maybe keep things stored locally on a DVD or hard drive or whatever. Yeah. You could use Amazon Photos. You could use Google Photos.
I personally use Google Photos, and obviously, no affiliation there in any way, just from personal use. I found it very easy to use. As to whether you want to give Google all your photos is absolutely up to you. I understand why you wouldn't. I was surprised actually with how intuitive Google Photos was in terms of searching and things.
I'll give you a funny story now. A slightly amusing story. Some months ago, I was using my HP laptop and had course to reinstall Windows, and I backed up as much as I could using recovery software. I had a bit of a problem with some of the photos because this was down to a failed update, if I remember rightly, and then there was a problem with the reinstallation. Anyway, what happened was I ended up with believing that photos had been lost, so I used recovery software to find them again. Spent 12 hours, big hard drive, record my photos, and then about 3 days into restoring the photos to the new installation of Windows, remembered that I have Google Photos.
They were just sitting there waiting for you.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
That's if I remember correctly, when I first discovered Google Photos, it wasn't because I'd been using it; it's because I opened it by accident, realized they were all already there, and was like, "Oh, that's convenient."
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Yes.
Even as a tech writer, I still surprise myself sometimes about things like that. Because that just already works. I don't even know how I feel about that.
Yeah. So that's what's going on with Flickr, and that story and some of the useful links for that and everything else that we're talking about in this week's podcast will be found in the show notes. Mm-hmm. So you can just wherever you're listening to this, just check the description. You'll find the show notes and just click the relevant story. Speaking of stories. Unbiased censorship.
Unbiased censorship? Wait a minute. Unbiased news sources, free from censorship.
Thank you. Yes.
So I see what you did there, because the title of the article that we're referring to is an article by Ryan Doob on the Make Use of website, and it's top 5 unbiased world news websites free from censorship. But if you slipped your eye down halfway through the first sentence, it does say top 5 unbiased censorship. This is unsurprisingly an article with a huge amount of comments either way. And so before we dive into the subject, I think it is worth saying that the article tries its best to define what a biased news source is, give examples of news sources that Ryan saw to be fairly unbiased. And I would consider Ryan someone who is... if he does have any form of bias, he does not show it. As he has said himself, he's someone that gets accused of being left-wing by right-wing people on Twitter and right-wing by left-wing people on Twitter. Yeah. So that immediately at the start, the fact that someone like that writing an article and still the comments being a bit of a fire pit does not say much to me in terms of whether we're going to come up with an answer to that question.
No, we're probably not. We do have some suggestions, but it is worth pointing out. The comments and general online discourse is usually polarized at the moment. Wherever you are, it's not just in the English-speaking world. It appears to be across Europe and North America, where obviously they speak mostly English. There's the South Pacific Islands. Is Australia an island? Do we call it that?
It is a very large island.
Yeah,
it's
a big island.
Continent, island. Who knows? It's a big island. Let's call it
that part of the world anyway. Yeah. So
regardless of where you are, where there are comment sections, this isn't just a so-called Western problem. I mean, I think the polarization of media and the fact that we all have a voice is something that is endemic now, I believe.
Yep, and I think we can possibly blame. We can apportion this to social media. I think by giving so many people a voice, which might not be the right word, because I'm pretty sure if you did have a voice, you probably wouldn't be using it to argue with people all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But the article itself, regardless of whether people agree that they are unbiased news sources, the article itself does give various examples of news sources that themselves claim to be unbiased. I think that's probably the safest way of putting it, with one exception, which we'll get to. But should I just go through the list?
Yeah, please do.
So the list of unbiased news sources here are the Associated Press, which is known for being unbiased, again, whether you agree with that or not. The Wall Street the Wall Street Journal, which prides itself on its unbiased nature. The BBC, I've skipped over one, I did that on purpose. The BBC, Reuters, and a few other unbiased news sources worth mentioning. And some of these might raise your eyebrows a bit. So Al Jazeera, some of you might kind of say, how could that possibly be unbiased? It's based out of Qatar. There's very different rules to the way things are done there. But some say that by the fact that it isn't actually under any kind of influence from America, that it can give, if not unbiased, a different slant on the news. C-SPAN and NPR and Christian Science Monitor, which I have been told is not quite
it's
what
nothing
it sounds
to do
like.
with me. I should just
I'd be terrified if I had my own news source.
Actually, this is my Science Monitor right here.
What is that? What is that? Is that a tablet?
Oh, it's a Raspberry Pi display.
Oh, it's a Pi. It's a Pi with a screen. Yeah. And the final one on this list is Pew Research, which is a purely fact-based. It's polls. It's more based on data. It's still a news source, but I would say it's more a research site than. That's a good sentence actually. It's self-described as a non-partisan fact tank.
Yes.
Now, the one that I glossed over in this list is Google News, and I think the reason the reason I glossed over it is because to call Google News an unbiased news source would be inaccurate. Google News is a news aggregator, which means it grabs news from wherever you tell it to. You can give it a list of things to grab news from, and therefore it's going to give you news from not unbiased sources, but maybe multiple sources biased in different directions.
Yeah.
And without going too deep into the philosophical argument and causing rage on the internet, I think rather than searching for an unbiased news source that somebody will, no matter how unbiased you think it is, somebody will tell you it's not. Maybe reading several biased news sources, biased on different ends of the political spectrum, might give you a slightly better idea than trying to find a singular source for your news. Again, that's my take on it, and it probably is causing rage to somebody right now.
Well, pop stars leaving Twitter causes rage. I would probably say don't go. This is only my opinion. I don't think looking at the more extreme arguments on either side is a good place to go. Try and only pain can be found in those areas. Maybe just don't go to extreme areas. Maybe just try and get a good balance. Read a few places with different takes on things and make your own mind up. As ever, make your own mind up. Don't let a media organization dictate what you think.
Indeed. Yep. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do, but
no, it's not. I'm beginning to sound like David Icke, so I'm going to stop now.
Let's move on to something that might be a little bit safer
and certainly more practical.
Yeah.
Do you use a printer?
I do, but I'll be the first to admit that I use a printer because someone gave me their old offshoot printer, and I am ashamed to admit that I am a tech writer who is one of those people that frequently shouts at printers, "Why are you not working?" So this is going to be an interesting article for me. The thing about this article that I specifically like is that there's a lot of articles that talk about cheap printers, but this is about cheap ink, which I think is something that is not talked about enough, because print manufacturers have been getting away with murder.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Long time.
It's beautiful, isn't it? They sell printers for like 30 quid, and then they sell the ink for like 30 quid.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just
amazing.
On the matter of expensive cartridges and ink, some years ago I worked in the NHS, and they were replacing printers, and it was too expensive to get the printers. If not expensive, then expensive and time consuming to get the printers responsibly disposed of.
Yeah.
So a lot of these printers were given away to members of staff to take home. So I ended up taking home a LaserJet, and these LaserJets they didn't only come with toner; they came with an imaging drum as well. So you're not only replacing the ink when the ink runs out, when the imaging drum runs out as well, you've got to replace that. You're looking at about conservatively £100 to sort out, running out of ink, and then when the imaging drum goes as well, you're looking at 100, maybe depends on how much printing you do, maybe £100 a year on new ink.
Yeah,
which is insane.
Right,
and I don't think things have changed that much, to be honest.
Yeah. It's, one thing to some of you, when I say this, you'll immediately see how crazy this sounds, but I'll explain it for those that might not understand what this means. HP ink cartridges have DRM, or at least had. I don't know if it's still true. Now, for those of you that don't know what that is the cartridges, physical ink cartridges that you put in your printer have unique identifiers on them that mean that if HP didn't make them, they will not fit into the printer. So even if you made ink cartridges that are essentially, let's not forget this, plastic boxes with ink in them, even if you made your own ink cartridge that fit perfectly, it would not work with the printer, and the printer would throw an error. That's how desperate they were to get you to buy ink from them. Which brings us back to this article. The great thing about this is these printers aren't the cheapest printers you can get, but they are ones that will work with a variety of third-party ink cartridges. And that is something that cannot be sniffed at. For example, I'm not going to go through the entire list on the podcast. There's a link to this article in the description of the show. But there's various, whatever your printing needs, spending a bit more on a printer that will allow you to use cheaper cartridges will save you more in the long run. And regardless of how much you print. And I don't know. I don't. Apart from finding DRM on ink cartridges crazy, I don't really have opinions on printers. I will say one thing. I have a LaserJet black printer for printing out things that I need to. I do not have a color printer, and despite being someone that has needed to get stuff printed, I'd say relatively regularly, I've never felt the need to get one, because down the road from me is a print shop. I can either email them or take a USB stick in, and I know I'm going to get what I want quickly, cheaply, usually with a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
So that is something to consider. But if you do need a printer, this is a great list of printers that will run for a long time cheaply, rather than the £100 a year that you're having to fork out.
Sure.
Yeah.
I don't do an awful lot of printing.
Yeah.
I would say probably a quarter of the printing that I do is test print pages. From changing the cartridges, because they've kind of dried up. My wife does a bit of printing. I did a piece of printing last week for my daughter, who wrote a song, and she's 7, which was gonna have to get buy her a new keyboard, I think. And the last thing I printed out was a script that I basically, because when you write scripts, it's a good idea to print them out and then find all the mistakes you couldn't find on the screen. So I don't use a print. I don't use my printer that much, but I can guarantee you that the thing that makes me so angry about my printer is when it runs out of ink, and then have to go and buy some more ink, and it's expensive, and it's unnecessarily expensive. You can buy printers that are cheaper than ink cartridges.
Yeah,
it is just crazy. I think this sums it up nicely from the article by Dan Price. By the ounce, printer ink is more expensive than a high-end bottle of champagne.
Yeah, that sums it up, isn't it? Yeah. That's just amazing.
So, there's it's probably worth mentioning some of the suggestions here. There's a Brother printer, HL L230DW, which is $124, which is very good value. and that's a laser
That's a
printer.
color laserjet. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that shows how long it's been really since I've actually looked at printers. I was not aware you could get color laser printers.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah.
Amazing price. And Brother are one of the original sort of printer companies as well.
Yeah.
They've also got the MFC, which is a multi-function printer with a scanner and fax and sheet feed on top. Also does photos. This is the Brother MFC J6930DW, which is $215. But I think I know it doesn't matter where you're going to go with this, as long as you stay away from Hewlett-Packard, from HP.
Yeah.
You're paying top end for printer, you're paying top end for ink, and you really want to be going for. I think Epson and Canon have both got affordable systems in place now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so,
I think that's the thing. As long as you avoid HP, who are the, as I said before, the ones that had DRM on their ink cartridges, I think you're probably going to be okay. And one other thing that I think you probably, if you're listening to this, you probably are already aware. But if you are in a position where you want something which is a little bit like the old school photocopiers in offices, we really are at a stage now that they're easy enough for kids to use, that they could put something into the scan bed and you can press a single button and it will be printed out in color.
Yeah.
For parents, that's something that is worth considering, that if you fork out maybe 50 quid more or something, you can get an all-in-one which will work with your computer, but is essentially also a standalone device. Which is which may well fit, for you. I can see myself probably getting one of those in the future for that exact reason, for having a standalone. Like you said, your daughter had written a song, and to be able to, if that was, for example, someone had drawn a picture, I'd quite like to have a copy of that so I can send it off to the grandmother or whatever.
Yeah.
That'd be good. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay. So that's affordable printers. Keep your printing affordable. And if you're not using the HP, or even if you are, there are ways of refilling printer cartridges. You can buy refill kits. They can get a bit fiddly and messy, so you need to decide whether or not that's going to be practical for you. Bit food for thought there. Let us move on to our final item, which is DIY computer desks.
This one's quite close to my heart, this one.
Yeah. Well, do you know
I'm
what?
a big fan of it.
The last time I built a computer desk, it's well, I'm saying build. I didn't really build. Well, I kind of did, but I didn't. Basically, what I did, I had a desk and a filing cabinet, and a set of drawers, and then I had two kitchen surfaces, and I basically arranged things in the corner of a room and then put two kitchen surfaces on top of me and in the middle, and I had a computer desk.
Yeah, that's exactly what various people I know have done. They got a kitchen surface and a couple of IKEA desks, and that's their desk. And it's something that is so widespread, and it's almost difficult for me to say, hey, go and read my article now, because if you really want a cheap desk, find a decent bit of wood and then something to stand it on. If it has drawers in it, all the better. However, there was a few, because I also have the same deal. I mean, my desk, my computer desk, is a secondhand IKEA desk I just found on Craigslist. But my working desk, so for when I'm doing DIY and Raspberry Pi stuff, is exactly that. I opted for something a bit higher because I stand when I do soldering work. Sure. So I have two large IKEA drawers with an old shelf on the top of it. And that works perfectly well for me. However, I will say one thing: it doesn't look particularly nice.
Right.
And that matters to a lot of people, especially if this is going to be a desk in the main room of your house. And that's where some of these other designs come in. One of the things that's quite nice about some of the trestle desks. So, for those of you that aren't familiar with the word, that's sort of like an A-frame. More famously these days sold by IKEA, they have an adjustable height A-frame. And two of those, obviously, they're like sawhorses. They're just two things that's freestanding, and you can choose what to put on top of it. Since they're made out of wood and they come in a variety of colors, and you can choose what you put on top of it, they are sturdy enough to support pretty much anything outside of maybe a stone top. They're movable, and they look good enough to be, say, in your living room.
Sure.
And that goes for a lot of the a lot of the more nice looking ones. There's been a bit of a craze for a while for these steel pipe desks as well, which are put together essentially of old iron piping for plumbing.
Right.
There's Pinterest pages abound of different designs for them because they're extendable. That's the exact point. Right. It's just pipe fittings,
Sure.
I mean, I would say if you are looking for, it depends what you're looking for. I will say that, because the real question when you're talking about DIY computer desks is should you bother?
Yeah.
Is it worth it? Are you gonna save yourself enough money by putting the time in to build it yourself, or should you just go and buy a cheap desk from, say, IKEA or whatever outlet store you have near you? The other question is, what kind of desk do you want? I mean,
yeah.
The idea of a standing desk a few years ago seemed a bit weird. Now it's something that almost everyone that works in an office is aware of, if not, seeing around them on a day-to-day basis, because desks that you stand at for the health benefits, desks that you can adjust to sit or stand at, and if you're going to make those DIY, then you're going to have to put a lot of work in, and you're going to spend a little more money. Or you could do what the fella, what was his name? The Brandon Keepers, who's a fella who's part of GitHub. He got two normal shelf brackets and a decent sturdy bit of wood, and then made a permanent stand-up desk out of a shelf, essentially.
Yeah.
So that, to me, I mean, if you've got a spare bit of wall space, that seems like a brilliant. That's I mean, he said it was $40. If you've already got a bit of wood, that's less than a tenner. For a couple of strong brackets, and then you can sit at your desk, and especially if you're someone that works on a laptop, it's a question of just walking over the room,
Yeah.
I must admit, for a long time now, I've been making a fully DIY electrical, probably counterweight, but still electric stand-up, sit-down desk has been a real thing I've wanted to do. I just haven't found the time. There's some fantastic tutorials out there for them.
We've talked about IKEA a lot on this topic, and I've done great things with IKEA stuff in the past. I built a Lego table with a £5 table and some Lego plates and some glue. Done repurpose other bits of things like spice racks as bookshelves and things like that. But one of the things I really fancy having, but I simply don't have the space for it, is the motorized adjustable standing desk from IKEA. Yes. That big thing. It's an awesome table. Basically, you could do so much at it with it, like DIY, baking, crafting, all the stuff like that. It just seems it has so many possibilities, but it's so bloody big to get in my little house.
Yeah.
Which is,
I think that's the main thing, and it stands to reason, really, especially if you're buying a commercial product, is that if for the really big standing desks, for them to put the real thing here, for those that aren't familiar with the idea, a standing desk is essentially two actuators. That's the moving parts in a standing desk, and actuators are basically motors on sticks that can take a bit of weight. That's what they are. If you're going to make a big standing desk, you're going to have to put some big actuators in it, and actuators are not the cheapest things in the world, which is why most of the standing desks you see, which are smaller, are not designed to take much weight. And to get one that does take a bit more weight, you're going to spend so much more on the actuators, you might as well sell a bigger desk, because not that many people are going to be willing to spend up to $1,000 on a tiny little desk. You see what I mean? You can do this yourself. You can buy actuators online, and in fact, the cost of them has dropped quite a lot. I was surprised. It's been a while since I looked at them, and again, one of the options in the list, the article that I wrote, is for someone that made it themselves, and I was pleasantly surprised. Having written the article, and as a lover of DIY, if you want my honest opinion, if you really want a stand-up, sit-down desk and you don't want a long period of testing and working it out, save up, make sure you've got the space, and buy an electric stand-up desk. Because if you're willing to put that level of commitment into the space it needs and the money it costs, you'll probably get the best use out of it.
Sure. So really anything can be used as a computer desk, can't it?
Oh, yeah. Well, one of the things in this article was the old idea, and it's a wonderful old story, that when Amazon was starting up, they couldn't afford desks, so they used doors.
Sure.
And they stuck feet on it. I have to admit that the idea of that does sound very romantic, doesn't it?
It does.
Back
I think
in the day.
Yeah, it depends on what sort of door it is, though, I suppose, as well.
Well, that's
covered door would be more practical than maybe a bathroom door.
Yeah, I mean, you really don't want one of those, one of those doors with all the dimpled bits of glass in it that you saw,
or all the sunken panels and
exactly.
Yeah.
And beyond that, even if you do have a completely smooth door, most internal doors of houses are made of a couple of thin bits of wood with essentially air in between. They don't need to be strung. And you don't want to be sticking a heavy computer monitor in one of those.
No.
Which is, so as much as the nice romantic idea of the Amazon door desks is, it's very nice to think, when Amazon was starting out, they're a small company, they were saving money. Really, to get a solid door and to put legs on it, you might as well buy a desk at that stage.
Buy a desk, yeah. Totally,
or at least buy a decent piece of wood and 4 legs and not call it a door, But either way, you can absolutely make a computer desk out of anything. And if you spend a very small amount of time, even on YouTube, you'll find there are some fantastic plans for incredibly cheap desks for things you could get at your local Home Depot or B&Q or wherever your nearest hardware shop is. So, yeah, if you want to make a simple desk, get some wood and do it. If you want an electric stand-up, sit-down desk, I'd suggest saving up and buying one.
Sure. So, that is this week's really useful podcast, in which we've discussed the new gear from Apple and why you might want it, how to overcome the new limits on Flickr. Clue, you can't overcome them. You need to get your gear out of Flickr, your photos out of Flickr, if there's more than 1,000 of them. Unbiased news sources that are free of censorship, and does such a thing exist? The best printer for use with cheap ink, to keep your printing budget as low as possible, and DIY computer desks. I think we're both people who have used DIY computer desks.
Absolutely.
And I've the one I described was actually part of a larger system which had some shelf. That metal. Those metal rails that you connect to the wall. Then you put your shelves into them. I'd actually arranged mine so that I had an extra long piece that I could use for stand-up work.
That's ideal. Yeah.
So that worked. I think at the time I was using a Microsoft Surface Pro tablet with a docking station with hard drives connected to it and 2 displays, so I could switch between sitting down and standing up. It was all very complicated, needlessly complicated, probably. But I did find a lot of benefit from standing up. But as I say, and as Ian said, shelves make desks, tables make desks. I tell you what, this table's a lot more sturdier than a honeycomb door. Yeah. We can be caught on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and all the other big podcast places. You can listen to us in the car via Stitcher as well. I think you've got one of those Stitcher systems.
Yeah. And as well as you mentioned at the start, these shows are also being videoed now. So for those of you that are watching us on YouTube, hello, you get the wave.
Bye.
And bye. And also just a big thank you, as Christian has mentioned before, since we did start the YouTube channel, it's been amazing how many people. I mean, we've just broken 1,000 subscribers.
Wow.
Thank you very much for that. All of these will be uploaded as videos as well. But that's, again, something we can maybe talk about in the future is video podcasts and how the best way to enjoy video podcasts. Maybe something we cover one day.
I would say click on them that says really useful podcast. But hey.
Great self-advertising. Well, it's been a pleasure, Christian. It's always nice to chat about this kind of stuff. Thank you for inviting me.
Not a problem, Ian. You can get in touch with us, viewer/listener, with your questions and maybe suggestions of content for us to discuss. Until next time, that's all from the Really Useful Podcast. Bye-bye.
Bye.